There are trillions of cells in your body, and at any given moment, some of them are making mistakes, dividing when they shouldn't, copying DNA incorrectly, growing in ways that don't follow the rules. This is happening inside you right now. And it's been happening every day of your life since before you were born. Your body has an extraordinary system for catching these mistakes, correcting them, or destroying the cells that can't be fixed. That system is the reason you don't develop cancer every single week. But that system doesn't work in a vacuum. It works inside an environment that you create with every meal. And what the research now shows with increasing clarity and increasingly alarming specificity is that certain foods most seniors eat every day don't just fail to help that system. They actively work against it. They create conditions inside your body where abnormal cells are more likely to survive, more likely to grow, and more likely to develop into something dangerous. Not by introducing some exotic toxin, by feeding the very machinery that tumors depend on to thrive. I want to walk you through 5 of these foods, explain the specific biological mechanism by which each one promotes cancer growth, and give you enough information to make an informed decision about what you keep eating and what you stop. None of this is speculation. All of it is backed by published, peer-reviewed research from some of the most respected cancer research institutions in the world. And all 5 of these foods are probably in your kitchen right now. Let's start with the one everybody suspects, but nobody fully understands, because the way sugar feeds cancer is not what most people think. And a study published in December 2024 in the journal Nature changed how scientists understand the entire mechanism. For years, the popular explanation was simple. Cancer cells consume more glucose than normal cells, so eating sugar feeds tumors directly. That idea comes from a real observation called the Warburg effect, which describes how tumor cells preferentially use glucose for energy even when oxygen is available. It's real biology, but it's an incomplete picture, and it led people to believe that if they just avoided sugar, they could starve their tumors. That's not quite how it works. What researchers at Washington University in St. Louis discovered in 2024 is that fructose, the sugar found in high fructose corn syrup and in table sugar alongside glucose, promotes tumor growth through an indirect pathway that nobody had identified before. They fed fructose to animals with melanoma, breast cancer, and cervical cancer, and tumor growth accelerated dramatically, in some cases doubling the rate at which tumors expanded. But when they isolated those same cancer cells in a dish and gave them fructose directly, the cells barely responded. They couldn't use it. The answer turned out to be the liver. Fructose gets absorbed and sent to the liver, where it is converted into lipids, specifically a class of fats called lysophosfatidylcholines. Those lipids are then released into the bloodstream, and cancer cells eagerly consume them. The tumors weren't eating the sugar, they were eating what the liver turned the sugar into. When the researchers blocked the liver enzyme responsible for this conversion, a protein called KHK, fructose stopped accelerating tumor growth. The mechanism was entirely dependent on the liver acting as a middleman, turning dietary fructose into a fuel that cancer cells crave. And here's why this matters so much for daily life. High fructose corn syrup is in almost everything on the American grocery shelf. It's in bread, cereal, yogurt, salad dressing, ketchup, granola bars, canned soup, and dozens of foods that don't even taste sweet. The average American consumes roughly 60 pounds of high fructose corn syrup per year. Most of it without even realizing it because it's hiding in products that aren't marketed as desserts. Your liver is processing that fructose every single day. And every single day it's converting a portion of it into the exact class of lipids that published research now shows can accelerate the growth of multiple cancer types. This isn't about fruit. The researchers and the National Cancer Institute were both very clear on that point. The fructose in whole fruit comes packaged with fiber, water, and phytonutrients that dramatically slow absorption and change how the body handles it. The problem is the industrial fructose added to processed foods, the kind that hits your liver in concentrated doses with nothing to buffer it. Check the ingredient label on the next 10 packaged foods you pick up. Count how many contain high fructose corn syrup or sugar in the top 5 ingredients. The number will probably disturb you. Now let's talk about something that has been sitting in your refrigerator for most of your adult life, and that carries a classification most people have never heard about. In 2015, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen. That is the highest classification the IARC assigns, it means there is sufficient evidence that processed meat causes cancer in humans. Not that it might, not that it's associated with, that it does. The same classification is given to tobacco smoking and asbestos. That doesn't mean eating a hot dog is as dangerous as smoking a cigarette, because the magnitude of risk is different, but the certainty of the evidence is the same. The IARC is saying with their highest level of scientific confidence that processed meat causes cancer. Processed meat means any meat that has been preserved by smoking, curing, salting, or adding chemical preservatives. Bacon, ham, hot dogs, sausages, deli meats, pepperoni, salami. The research points to colorectal cancer most specifically, with the risk increasing by roughly 18% for every 50 grams of processed meat consumed daily. 50 grams is about 2 slices of bacon or 1 hot dog. The mechanisms are well documented. When processed meat enters your digestive tract, the heme iron in the meat facilitates the formation of compounds called N-nitroso compounds, which are potent carcinogens that damage the DNA in the cells lining your colon. Studies on human volunteers have measured this directly, showing that processed meat consumption produces a 4-fold to 6-fold increase in the excretion of these carcinogenic compounds compared to baseline. On top of that, the nitrates and nitrites added during processing as preservatives can convert into additional nitrosamines inside your body, compounding the damage. And if the meat was cooked at high temperatures, grilled, pan-fried, or smoked, you're also getting heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, both of which are established carcinogens that form specifically during high heat cooking of muscle meat. The average senior in America eats processed meat almost daily. A few slices of deli turkey on a sandwich, some bacon at breakfast, a hot dog at a cookout. It feels harmless because it's familiar, but the DNA damage happening in the cells of your colon is cumulative. And every serving adds to a running total that your repair systems have to work harder and harder to keep up with as you age. This isn't about never eating bacon again. It's about understanding that what feels like a minor dietary habit carries a biological cost that compounds over years and decades, and that the world's most authoritative cancer research body has classified it at the highest possible level of concern. This is the one that's going to surprise a lot of people, because seed oils have been promoted as heart-healthy alternatives to saturated fat for decades. And the full story turns out to be considerably more complicated than the marketing suggested. Soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, and similar seed-derived cooking oils are extremely high in an omega-6 fatty acid called linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is an essential nutrient, meaning your body needs some of it and can't make it on its own. In small amounts, it's fine. The problem is that since the 1950s, the consumption of seed oils in the American diet has increased enormously, largely because they were cheap to produce and became the default fat in processed foods, fried foods, and restaurant cooking. As a result, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in the modern Western diet has shifted from roughly equal proportions historically to somewhere around 15 or 20 to 1 today. That level of imbalance was never part of the human dietary experience until the industrial food system created it. In March 2025, researchers at Weill Cornell Medicine published a study in the journal Science that identified for the first time a direct biological mechanism linking linoleic acid to the growth of an aggressive form of breast cancer. They found that linoleic acid binds to a protein called FABP5, which is abundant in triple-negative breast cancer cells, and this binding activates the mTORC1 pathway, a central regulator of cell growth and metabolism. In a mouse model, a diet high in linoleic acid enhanced tumor growth of this specific cancer subtype. The researchers also found that patients with triple-negative breast cancer had higher concentrations of linoleic acid in both their tumors and their blood samples, suggesting the connection extends beyond the animal model. Now, I want to be balanced about this because the research is nuanced and scientists themselves caution against overreaction. Memorial Sloan Kettering published a review noting that only a tiny fraction of linoleic acid converts to inflammatory arachidonic acid, and that typical seed oil consumption may not cause inflammation in most people. The relationship between seed oils and cancer is still being studied, and no major cancer organization has called for eliminating them entirely. But here's what is not in dispute. The amount of linoleic acid in the average American diet has increased by roughly 1,000% over the past century, driven almost entirely by soybean oil, which now accounts for the majority of edible oil consumed in the country. Preclinical research has repeatedly shown that high linoleic acid intake can exacerbate colon tumor development in animal models. And the 2025 Science paper provides the first clear molecular mechanism by which this fat directly activates a tumor growth pathway in a specific aggressive cancer. The science is not settled, but the trajectory of the evidence is pointing in a direction that should make you think carefully about how much of your cooking and eating is built around these oils, particularly when alternatives like extra virgin olive oil offer documented protective benefits instead. This one is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people because alcohol occupies a protected cultural space that makes it very difficult to talk about honestly. People who would never put a cigarette in their mouth will have a glass of wine every night and consider it healthy. And the research says they need to reconsider that assumption. The IARC classified alcohol as a Group 1 carcinogen in 1988. That classification has not changed. It has only been reinforced by additional evidence in the decades since. Alcohol causes at least 7 types of cancer: cancers of the mouth, throat, larynx, esophagus, liver, colon, and breast, and the mechanism is not subtle or unclear. When your body metabolizes ethanol, the alcohol in every beer, wine, and spirit, it converts it into a compound called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is a recognized human carcinogen. Even at low concentrations, it reacts directly with your DNA, creating structural damage called DNA adducts and chromosomal aberrations that, if not repaired, can lead to mutations, and mutations in the wrong gene at the wrong time in the wrong cell are how cancer begins. But acetaldehyde isn't the only problem. Alcohol metabolism also generates reactive oxygen species that cause oxidative stress and lipid peroxidation, further damaging DNA. Alcohol disrupts folate metabolism, which impairs your body's ability to properly methylate DNA, an epigenetic process critical for keeping certain genes turned on or off correctly. It alters the gut microbiome in ways that increase intestinal permeability, sometimes called leaky gut, allowing inflammatory compounds to enter the bloodstream. And in the case of breast cancer specifically, alcohol increases circulating estrogen levels, which promotes the growth of hormone receptor positive tumors. The World Health Organization stated in 2023 that no safe amount of alcohol consumption for cancer risk can be established. That's a stark statement from the world's leading public health body, and it directly contradicts the popular belief that moderate drinking is protective. The truth is that even 1 drink per day increases breast cancer risk in women by a measurable amount, and the risk rises with every additional drink. Globally, roughly 4% of all new cancer cases, over 740,000 per year, are attributable to alcohol consumption. I'm not telling you to never drink again. That's your decision. What I'm telling you is that the science is unambiguous, and it has been for decades. Alcohol is not a gray area in cancer research. It is a confirmed dose-dependent carcinogen that causes DNA damage through multiple independent pathways. If you drink regularly, you should at least know what that choice is doing inside your body so you can make it with your eyes open rather than under the comfortable illusion that your evening glass of wine is doing you good. And now the final one, and this is the food category that ties everything else together, because ultra-processed foods contain most of the problems I just described, all packaged into the same product. Ultra-processed foods are industrially manufactured products that typically contain ingredients you would never use in a home kitchen: emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners, hydrogenated oils, flavor enhancers, colorings, preservatives, and texturizers. Think frozen dinners, instant noodles, packaged snack cakes, sugary cereals, flavored yogurts, mass-produced breads, chicken nuggets, and soft drinks. In the United States, ultra-processed foods now make up roughly 60% of the average adult's calorie intake. For many seniors living alone and cooking less, the percentage is even higher. A meta-analysis published in 2023 in the journal Clinical Nutrition examined 11 studies and found that every 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed food in a person's diet was associated with a statistically significant increase in overall cancer risk, with the strongest associations found for breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and pancreatic cancer. A study published in July 2025 in the BMJ journal Thorax linked higher ultra-processed food consumption to increased risk of both small cell and non-small cell lung cancer. And a separate study found that ultra-processed food consumption was associated with increased ovarian cancer mortality. The mechanisms are not mysterious. when you look at what these products contain. They deliver high fructose corn syrup, which we just discussed converts to tumor-feeding lipids in the liver. They use seed oils as their primary fat source, flooding your diet with excess omega-6 linoleic acid. Many contain processed meat derivatives. They come in plastic packaging that can leach endocrine-disrupting chemicals. They're calorie-dense but nutrient-poor, promoting the obesity and insulin resistance that independently raise cancer risk. And they displace the whole foods, the vegetables, fruits, legumes, and healthy fats that published research consistently shows reduce cancer risk. Ultra-processed foods are not one problem. They are every problem, delivered in a single convenient package designed to be cheap, shelf-stable, and hyper-palatable. The convenience is real. The cost to your body is also real. And the research linking these products to cancer is growing stronger and more specific every year. I'm not going to pretend that changing the way you eat is easy, especially when the foods I just described make up the foundation of the modern American diet. They're everywhere. They're cheap. They're what most restaurants serve, and most grocery aisles are built around. Walking away from them entirely isn't realistic for most people, and I'm not asking you to, but here's what you can do, starting with your next trip to the grocery store. Read the ingredient label. If high fructose corn syrup appears in the first 5 ingredients, that product is delivering fructose to your liver in quantities your body was never designed to handle. Choose products made with whole ingredients you recognize. Replace some of the soybean and corn oil in your cooking with extra virgin olive oil, which carries documented protective effects rather than documented risks. Reduce your processed meat intake from daily to occasional. If you drink alcohol, be honest with yourself about the dose and the frequency, and understand that the cancer risk is real and dose dependent and not offset by whatever antioxidants are in the wine. None of this requires a complete overhaul of your life. It requires awareness and small, consistent shifts in the same grocery store you already shop at. The research I've shared with you today comes from Nature, Science, the World Health Organization, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, and major university cancer centers. It represents the best available evidence from the most credible sources in the world. Your body's ability to catch and correct abnormal cells depends on the environment you create inside it. And the food you eat every single day either supports that system or quietly undermines it. Now you know which foods are doing which. What you do with that information is up to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.